guys, I'm Nymfria and welcome back to another watch list episode for The Scout. What a bonkers few weeks it's been. To help decipher who we should be adding to our watch list this week, I'm joined as always by my co-host and good friend Kylie. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Nim. How are you? It's good to be back. It's been a bit of upheaval recently, obviously, with COVID cancellations and disciplinary actions. And I'm looking at you, Captain Foden, here, and taking it very personally. um, there's just so much going on, and of course, we're right into the Christmas period as well, which is always chaotic anyway. So it's a bit of a mad time for us to be recording, but you know, we'll steamroll ahead and hopefully have some good tips for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We will forge ahead like the Premier League is doing this Christmas. There's every possibility we may get some double game weeks in Game Week 20 and 21 as the league tries to catch up with all of the games that have been postponed so far. So with all of this in mind, Kylie, what will we be attempting to cover in this video?
Attempting is right, because there's news dropping left, right and centre, and it's sort of a scramble to keep up. But we'll be doing our usual, which is touching on some of our newest additions to the watch list. These are players that we're starting to consider for our teams. And now, ordinarily, we take a shorter term approach with this, but we are looking very long, well, not very long term, but we're looking over the course of a few weeks now, because obviously it's just a few days out from the next round. And of course, Christmas and fixtures are going to come thick and fast in that period. And then on top of that, we have these potential double game weeks that we need to be thinking about. So what we really want to do is try and take a view over all of that information that's coming up. And of course, news that has just dropped. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it about 2 minutes before we jumped on to record, is that the Premier League or Fantasy Premier League have decided to give a second free hit to everyone to help them battle with the whole COVID postponement. So this is available from Game Week 20 onwards. I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of chat about that over the coming days. Absolutely. That's something that we're now going to have to think about in terms of chip strategy, in terms of the players that we're choosing, whether we need to be investing in players, you know, as a purchase decision who have double game weeks, or whether we'll play that new free hit chips. So lots going on there. But I guess it's worth saying that we are recording on Wednesday afternoon today, just to get the jump on the crazy Christmas that's coming up, and lots of last minute Christmas shopping for some of us, me definitely. So all the information is correct as at this time, but usual caveat applies. We will have press conferences and lots of other information to come in the build up to the deadline. So be sure to stay on top of that as well and factor that into any decisions that you're making too. On that note, let's get started.
And the first name making it onto our watch list ahead of Christmas is Son. He's not exactly an out there pick in terms of being differential, Kylie, is he?
Not really.
However, lots of managers will have gotten off of him during the postponed fixtures in Game Week 16 and 17. Given his 10.3 million price tag, he would have been an easy sell, and he was for myself when I wanted to move on to a City midfielder. Son is currently 16.2% owned, and despite missing 2 game weeks, he has still been delivering. He's had 3 goals and 1 assist in his last 3 games played, and only looks strengthened by missing some of those postponed fixtures, rather than dipping in form. As a team, Spurs look to have really capitalised from their breakaway and look great during their 2-2 draw with Liverpool. Son was really unlucky not to have got more points in that matchup. He just looked amazing. Spurs will need the fixtures they had postponed rearranged, meaning that whenever the games get rescheduled, whether it's 20 or 21 or both of them or another time, they will have more games to play than some of the other teams in the Premier League. That means that surely we should be considering at least one of Son or Kane for our teams. What do you think, Kylie?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I'm unfortunately one of the poor souls who invested in Kane pre-COVID cancellations and various things, as opposed to Son. we've got, a support group that needs to happen there. Because, and you can imagine that first goal at the weekend, Payne scoring was
Oh,
highly irritating
yeah.
to me, and I'm sure many others who are in that boat. I haven't actually owned Son this season. Every time I go to buy him, something sort of seems to stand in the way, but he's definitely one worthy of consideration. He's obviously a sort of semi-premium option, but he just has that tendency to deliver when we need him to. So he's got a season-long XG of 4.77 and he scored 7 goals. So he is outperforming that, but that's not atypical for a player of Son's caliber. What is encouraging as far as his XG is concerned is that in the last match against Liverpool, no less, his XG for that match was 0.71, which is more than double what his average XG over the course of the season has been per match. So that's pretty positive signs, and I think we can all agree it's the strongest that Tottenham have looked. And whether that's because they've had more time with Conte, they've had more training, any of these things could be a factor. But to go up against Liverpool and come away with that performance is pretty impressive. As far as his XA is concerned, it's 1.94, and that's about on par, because although he does have 3 assists this season, one of those is, a fantasy assist, so it's not like an Opta classified real football assist. So he's performing about on par in that respect. And I think, as you said, Nim, given that they've got 3 missed fixtures, right? 2 due to COVID, 1 due to snow. He's performed well despite that massive disruption. And we continue to see that strikers are not performing impressively at all. And then we've got AFCON around the corner if it goes ahead.
Yeah.
And indeed, if it does go ahead, then we've got Salah, namely, missing out there. So that's a lot of cash that needs to be spent elsewhere. So I really don't think that his price tag is going to prove to be prohibitive for people in terms of investing in him. And of course, the fixtures are the massive draw here. The next 5 are Crystal Palace, Southampton, Watford, Arsenal, and Chelsea. So obviously, those first 3 are looking better than the latter 2. But with Burnley, Brighton, and Leicester yet to be scheduled,
Yes.
Even as far as single game weeks are concerned, they still look pretty good. You add in these doubles that have to happen at some point, right?
Yeah.
That is an inevitability. What isn't inevitable is the when. But given the fact that the decision, it's either been made or they're discussing it about cancelling FA Cup replays, right? So that's actually freeing up midweeks in 21 and 22, which could potentially have matches played. So this is why you will have heard lots of conversations going on about possible doubles in 21 and 22. We've yet to see whether that eventuates, but it really does make sense for the Premier League to schedule matches in those fixtures, because of course during the duration of this season there's going to be more postponements due to various different things, COVID aside. And so we'll get the usual doubles that we get anyway. If they leave it too late in the season, it's going to be really difficult to get all of those matches in on time. So I think with all of that in mind, we absolutely have to think about him as an option, someone who's really appealing, because he does have the pedigree. And I think we don't want to get burnt by Spurs again, but there's maybe some degree of reassurance as well in that they're on the other side of their COVID dramas. That's not to say that more players won't get COVID, but if we look at some of the other teams that haven't really had an outbreak versus a major outbreak having happened at Tottenham and them now being at this point, maybe they're slightly safer to invest in.
Yeah.
That's a bit of conjecture. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's hopeful thinking.
Hopeful thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you going to go in for him, do you think?
Yeah, I think I would like to. It might not be this week. I think I'm going to try my hardest to roll a transfer, I think. But Son and Ronaldo, as we'll be chatting a little bit about United later, are probably at the top of my list to get in the next coming weeks. So, yeah. Let's move on to our second pick. And it's more of a short-term pick based on the current circumstances. And it's Simicast. Our early season hero looks set to make a Christmas return to cover Robson, who is out due to his red card. Can you believe that Simicast is now a major steal at just 3.7 million? And despite losing his place back to Robson pretty much as early as game week 9, I think it was, he's still 11.2% owned by FPL managers, meaning he's still warming a fair few benches out there at the moment. Whilst Liverpool don't have any doubles that we're aware of just yet, they have kept 10 clean sheets this season, making them second top behind Manchester City. Of course, Simicast has missed a fair few of these, but it's not a bad defence to invest in, especially with a player that cheap. Just be a bit wary though that there isn't quite such a solid defence when Van Dijk is missing, and at the moment he has missed out against Spurs, so he's something to keep an eye on there. However, as we know, Simicast comes with attacking threat. Kylie, I know it's been a little while since we had some game time from him, but can you remind us of why he's such a great pick?
Yeah, so obviously, stats-wise, we've very low numbers, and that's really reflective of the fact that he's only had 4 starts and 3 appearances. So obviously, this was during Robbo's injury.
Yeah.
We did see him performing outside of Premier League as well, and looking very good in those matches too. His XG for the season is 0.15 and an XA of 0.85. Those aren't hugely high numbers, but in fairness to him, again, it's the minutes thing.
Yeah.
I think when you look at Simicast, it's really the fact that he's passed the eye test that's quite compelling. Okay, so we saw him up near the box quite a lot, really filling in and deputizing effectively for Robbo. In fact, given that until the last few matches, Robertson's performances had been quite subpar this season. And there were a lot of calls from Liverpool fans that Simicast actually get the start over him pre this ban. So, you know, he's not a bad player to have in the mix. And certainly at 3.7, I don't think I've ever seen a player go down to 3.7. Certainly not to be revived again as an option.
No.
So that's quite interesting. Look, he did get 1 assist in his time during the Premier League. And I think the key thing here is that because the ban was for violent conduct, it's a 3-match ban.
Yes.
So if it was a 1-match ban for Robbo, it's just not worth it, right? To try and bring in Simicast. I mean, it would be great, as you said, for those who have him on the bench already. That's quite helpful. But if you're not one of those people, you really needed to get a few matches together. So 3 of them starts to make him look viable just to get through this next week of congestion because they don't have an alternative to him with Robbo being out. So it's super short term, but the run is Leeds, Leicester and Chelsea, right? So it's on paper a bit of a mixed bag and it might seem like a little bit of a luxury move. But if you're someone like me who has maybe a Duffy, now in theory, Duffy might be back, right? But, you know, he did get dropped. He then missed out because of a ban and they've had COVID, so, you know, postponements, various things. So I don't even remember the last time Duffy was available on my team. It's just been a dead spot. But if you've got someone like that, you know, and you just want to get an alternative in, I mean, the key thing here is there's lots of people that have the Jota, Salah and Trent triple up. So he's a no-go for them. But if you had Robbo or you only had 2, he could plug in there nice and cheaply and kind of get you through that Christmas run. And I think, obviously, we know that Liverpool have been a standout team attacking-wise this season. That's not unusual, but they've scored 3 or more goals 10 times already. So, I mean, we had that run where they were just scoring 4 goals every match. So when you compare that then with the defensive form of the teams that he will be playing, I mean, the Leeds match, obviously Leeds are in a particularly difficult run at the moment. Over the last 4 matches, they've shipped 16 goals, which is comfortably the worst defense in that metric over that period. Leicester obviously haven't been that impressive this season defensively. And Chelsea, while they started very strongly, they're not currently proving to be such a stern test. And in fact, Leicester and Chelsea are sort of in the bottom half of the table for goals conceded, both with 6 over that 4-week period. There's a big difference between Leeds and the 2 of them. but they're still not looking that strong. So I think it's not too stern a test, and there's potential there to get an attacking return. He is quite a differential, and for those who really need to plug a gap and can get him, he's a nice option for this period. Would you be considering him, or are you on the triple up?
I'm already on the triplet, so I don't think I'll be squeezing him in, but I definitely think if I didn't have 3 Liverpool, or that I was wanting to look on moving, say, somebody like Livramento out, who has
Yeah.
fallen off of a cliff recently.
0 point hauls every week. Thanks,
Yes,
Livramento.
exactly. I think that then Simicast is somebody who you could consider. Obviously, at the moment, having a plain bench is very helpful under the circumstances. You know that you can be guaranteed, well, hopefully you can be guaranteed the next 3 game weeks out of Simicast. But then it's whether or not you're going to be in a situation where you can move him on, or you're happy enough to continue letting him warm your bench. But with all of these games as tightly packed as they are, if Simicast comes back and absolutely smashes it out of the park with Robson away, that could result in some rotation and allow Klopp to consider whether or not he wants to, play him more often, and then he becomes an option again at a very cheap price.
Okay, so let's move on then to our third pick.
Yeah, and this one comes from a club that has great fixtures. They have 2 fixtures to be rescheduled, meaning they could get the elusive double-double, and it's looking more and more likely, and that pick is David De Gea. Before United's fixture got postponed, they were looking better defensively, bagging 2 clean sheets in a row against Crystal Palace and Norwich. That brought United's clean sheets to 4 for the season. Not massively impressive, but I know it's an area that Ralph has wanted to improve, and it looks as if he was starting to achieve that before all of the disruption there at United. The United goalkeeper is 5.1 million, and at the moment is a real differential at just 7.8% owned. He's made 53 saves this season and currently sits on 66 points, placing him 7th top for goalkeepers. Not brilliant, but you'd like to think with the fixtures ahead that he can improve on that. De Gea is the emphasis of a watch list player, along with United defence, aren't they, Kylie? Because the potential with them, given the up-and-coming fixtures, and improvement in form before their postponement is massive, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're really looking at potentially 2 completely different, teams, right? Not insofar as personnel, but insofar as performance, because they massively underperformed under Ole this season, and it kind of progressively got worse and worse before his dismissal. As you alluded to, 4 clean sheets, not amazing, but 2 of them since Ralph's taken over, they have looked better. I mean, one scary stat is the 24 goals conceded, right? This season is pretty diabolical for a team of United's caliber.
Yep.
But I do think that with the combination of fixtures coming up, and we'll run through those in a second, you can maybe start to feel a little bit more optimistic. 5.1 as well for the likes of De Gea isn't a steep ask. He did get 10 points against Norwich as well, so I think he made 5 saves there, and he must have got the bonus in the end as well. And as you mentioned, he's got 53 saves so far this season. I think that's about 6th or 7th overall, but it is on par with Ramsdale. So Ramsdale's obviously a highly owned, very popular pick.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to move away, De Gea certainly has the fixtures to be a really good option. And I think one of the other things to consider is that with a goalkeeper, it's really not a position that you want to be chopping and changing too much this season, right? It's kind of a long-term transfer that you're making.
Yeah.
So with him, it is really good that he not only has that combination of good fixtures in the short term, but they do extend for a good run. And then on top of that, there's the potential for these double-doubles. So his run currently includes Burnley, Wolves, Aston Villa, West Ham, Burnley again, Southampton, Leeds, Watford, plus postponed fixtures against Brentford and Brighton waiting in the wings. So there's plenty of clean sheet potential in that if they can actually continue to perform. And I think another thing worth noting as well, obviously they've had these games postponed due to COVID, so there's some degree of reticence about, who is and isn't fit, who does and doesn't have COVID. We did see that training pictures were released yesterday. It is noted that De Gea, amongst many others, was seen at Carrington, which is great. We didn't see Diogo Dalot, who was someone who was proving to be quite popular, gaining a bit of momentum just before the postponement, as he started to get some regular minutes. So I would keep an eye on that. Ronaldo was another one who wasn't there, but apparently he's showed up today. So you'll be happy to know, given that you're looking at him. So keep an eye on that news, because that's a constantly changing thing. But I think the fact that De Gea has been seen in training, give him the thumbs up. You really don't want to be bringing in a keeper and then having to change him again with all of that uncertainty. So I think, even though I'm personally quite happy with Ramsdale at the moment, it does feel like everybody has Ramsdale. And so I think there could be a case for going for De Gea.
Yeah, I actually have both at the moment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a really unfortunate set of circumstances with my goalkeepers has led me to a point where somehow I've ended up with both De Gea and Ramsdale. So I just literally every week, I lost Sanchez, then I lost Raya, then I went back to Sanchez again, who I lost, then I went on to Gaeta, who missed out, so then went on to De Gea, and then in a situation where I went for Ramsdale last week. So I actually have them both, which in a way, seeing these nice fixtures now for United, and like just with the potential for United assets at the moment, I'm feeling quite good about it, because it means that even though I am going to have to use an extra transfer to move Ramsdale on, it does allow me to do that when I'm ready to, rather than kind of then needing to try and find a way or find money to put into De Gea. So yeah. Okay, it's that time of the episode where we're going to take a quick look at the Fantasy Football Scout watch list ahead of the coming game weeks, which you can find on the first page of the website. It covers all of the positions and takes into account current form, favourable fixtures, and so on. What's standing out for you on this week's Scout watch list, Kylie?
I think Ronaldo there in top spot on the forwards list is an interesting one, because only a few hours ago I had very deep concerns that, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, that he wasn't seen at training yesterday. So I was thinking, okay, that's him out of the running. And obviously he was positioned there based on fixtures, but now it looks like he has been seen again, so it's completely warranted. And I think anyone that can kind of swing back to Ronaldo is going to want to, because let's be honest, the strikers are so unappealing at the moment. We've been saying it for weeks, and it just continues to be more and more true. I did get rid of Ronaldo when their match was cancelled, so I'm going to have to try and figure out how to get him back now. Same. But he's basically the only one that stands out there. And another point that's worth noting, and this is from the goalkeeper chart, which isn't on screen as goalkeepers are less exciting. But Jose Sarr from Wolves he's moved a bit up on the goalkeeper list, and I think that's absolutely warranted. Statistically, Wolves have been really impressive in recent weeks from a defensive perspective, while very underwhelming from an attacking perspective. He just continues to tick away, and he made, I think it was 8 saves against Liverpool and only conceded 1 goal. Then he's got clean sheets in subsequent weeks. So he's a kind of under the radar keeper option. Now, they've not missed out on fixtures. So the lack of appeal there is, obviously without having doubles compared to, say, a De Gea. But I think he does look a really stable option for anybody who might have him over this period, assuming that there's no outbreak at Wolves.
Yes.
I hope I haven't cursed them. And it's also interesting as well that James hasn't actually dropped further down the list. Obviously, Cancelo and Trent up there at the top continue to be incredibly impressive week in, week out. And James, who had been so strong, falling all over the place,
Yeah.
has had some, he did well last game week when we needed him to. So thank you for that, Reese. But previous to that, with Chelsea's defense not looking as rock solid and him not getting the attacking returns, he's been a little bit under par for his price in that time. And I think we're seeing a lot of people start to move away from that double Chelsea defense that they had before.
Yeah, especially as they're going to miss out with some blank game weeks in the coming weeks too. So yeah, that is a surprise. I was pretty shocked to not see him drop down as well. All right, time for our watch list picks for Christmas. Then Kylie, and my pick this week is going to be the cheap Southampton forward, Brozier. I was going to go Martinelli of Arsenal with his 3 goals and 1 assist in 3 games, just 4.5% owned and 5.3 million, but there's still a tiny doubt, and it is just a tiny doubt at the moment, that the Norwich fixture might be postponed. I still think he's a worthy pick for your watch list though, although Arsenal don't have any double game weeks at the moment, and they do have some tougher fixtures after Norwich, so that's why I've plumped for Brozier as my pick. I've gone with him as Saints seem to be one of the teams least likely to miss out on Boxing Day at the moment, and whilst he's unlikely to get a double game week, he could get at least one with some tasty fixtures including Wolves and Brentford. Brozier has made 13 appearances in the Premier League this season and has started 6, including 4 of the last 5. In his 616 minutes played, he's had 11 shots on target. That's more than Bruno, Gundogan, Lacazette, Mopai, Jimenez, Ings and Rashford. Can you believe it? Of those 11 shots, he's converted 4 into goals. His XG is 2.41 and his XA is 0.09, meaning he's more likely to get you a goal than he is to get you an assist. However, you can't complain with that at just 5.1 million, who is only 3.8 owned at the moment, so nice little differential. He's nailed to start, with Long being the only other fit striker, with Adams and Armstrong both being an unknown return date on the website. That is why he's on my watch list anyway. Kylie, are you considering the Southampton man at all, and who is making your watch list pick ahead of Christmas and why?
So yeah, I think Brozier has been really effective when he's played for Southampton, and particularly at that price point. I mean, 5.1, really beyond that, you've got Gelhardt, who may or may not play, and no other active strikers that are playing. So if you're going for the spend less up front and spread the money further back strategy, he is a good option. He's cheaper than the Watford boys. And I think the biggest negative for him during the last period was the fact that there was some doubt of his minutes due to Southampton having numerous strikers available.
Yeah.
Obviously, them being injured really elevates him as a kind of sturdy pick for your team over the next period. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with going for him at the moment. Particularly, people are going to start to be wondering maybe a bit about Dennis and AFCON. He was put on a preliminary list for them. Now, whether he actually makes the cut, we've yet to see.
I'm hoping not.
Yeah, I
I've got
think
him in my team.
Collective powers of everyone is hoping he's not. But if he does, then someone like Brozier could be an able substitution. Or if you're someone who has any other injuries or COVID problems up front, he could slot in for the time being, and he's done really well. So I don't see any issues with that. And he may yet come into my team as well. As for my pick, I've gone with none other than Zaha. So he's a bit of a forgotten man recently. Obviously, he's been massively overlooked due to the continuing form of Conor Gallagher, and that's really hard to argue with, because obviously Conor was cheaper and he's done really well. But he's at 25.2% ownership and Zaha is at 5.7% ownership. So that's really one of the things that swings in his favor, is that great differential potential that he has over the festive period. He is typically a 90-minute man. There have been a couple of matches, he's missed out on a match. He's come off the bench for another. I believe that was due to injury. But for the last good period, he's played 90 minutes. And really, when you're making selections, forget COVID for the moment, right? Because we can't account for that. But when you're making selections over the Christmas period, really what you want to be seeing is those people who are pretty steady options and are most likely, barring injury or COVID, going to start for you. And I think he represents that. His fixtures against Norwich in Game Week 20 and 24 look particularly appealing. Although the run around that is a little bit mixed, so that's something to factor in. They've also got a great fixture against Watford that needs to be rescheduled. So as we know, Watford love to score goals and they love to concede even more of them. So they are officially our favourite team to play against at the moment. So I think with that kind of a double on the horizon that would feature Watford, that starts to look really appealing as well. Interestingly, he has overperformed his XG a bit. It's 3.54 to 5 goals, and he's definitely underperformed on the assist front because he's got an XA of 2.94 with just 1 assist. The 5 goals and 1 assist isn't absolutely stellar. It's less impressive than Gallagher, but I still think at a time when we're really struggling to find quite stable differentials because players are dropping out of the options list quite swiftly, I think that he could be someone who could tick away quite well. And if he gets a bit of a rhythm going, I think he could do well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And he is one to add to the watch list, I think, when, we have other players that potentially blank incoming game weeks and doubling incoming game weeks. He could just be a way to pad out your team, as you say, and just be a consistent player during all of that. Well, that's it. Best of luck over Christmas, you guys. Don't forget to set yourselves some alarms for the deadlines, and it's likely best to leave your transfers until the day of the deadlines, given the current situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I would stress leaving it as late on the day as possible. That's really difficult for any viewers who are watching from Australia or other far-flung places where you really get stuck with the time difference there. But we have seen them cut it quite fine on the cancellations, though we do know that the Premier League is very keen for games to go ahead, so hopefully it won't be a problem for you. Anyway, in the meantime, leave us a comment below with players that you're adding to your watch list. We're really keen to see that. And please, of course, like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the show. You can find a link to mine and Nim's content below. And so until next time, take care, have a great and safe Christmas, and we'll be back in the new year with more watch list picks for you.